This is Dave with Silver Creek Outfitters bringing you a late fall and early winter fishing forecast. I want to talk about the big wood first. We had a lot of problems on it in the past month since the fires. We had a lot of ash and mudslides fall into the river out Warm Springs, north on the big wood, down by Deer Creek and Greenhorn, and it really affected the river a lot. It really colored it for a long time. It's now starting to clear and it's actually looking pretty good. We've seen big fish out there and small fish, so we might have lost some fish, but there's still a fairly good population out on the river. I think short term it might affect us a little bit, but long term it'll be good for the system. If you go out fishing on the wood, I think the fish are a little stressed, so be careful with them. Fishing's pretty good right now, but as you can see, the leaves are changing and the leaves are going to fall in the river. And actually the wood kind of gets tough for 2 or 3 weeks when we have all the leaves in this time of year and this time of the fall time slot. But you want to go out with nymphs, and I'd maybe bring bigger nymphs. I'd bring some zebras and some small stuff like 16s and 18s, but I also have some 12s, 14s, and bigger on my fly. I'll do a lot of streamer fishing this time of year. If you do see hatches on the wood, it's usually midges or blue-winged olives. And usually that's middle of the day, like 2, 3, 4 o'clock, kind of the warmest part of the day. But take it easy on the fish if you're out there. Let them recoup a little bit. Silver Creek's open through the end of November, and that's the Nature Conservancy part of the creek, and it fishes really good this time of year. I like the sunny days, but my favorite days this time of year are overcast, windy, drizzly, snowy days. So there's some very good fishing to be had at Silver Creek. There's good blue-winged hatches most of the day. Most of the day is in the afternoons on. You could go late morning depending on the temperatures, but I think you're going to see most of your bugs out 2, 3, 4 o'clock, kind of the same time period as the big wood. There's mahogany duns out still. That's a size 16 and 18, and I think as we move into the later season, you want to go with a smaller mahogany dun, which is the size 18. The browns are working down there on the reds. Please leave them alone on the reds. There's plenty of fish in other places. The Silver Creek Restoration Project is now moving below Kilpatrick Bridge. They've started in the Purdy's, and they're actually bringing the dredge up, and the dredge is almost to the bridge, so they've done a lot in the past week or two. So that's moving along good. There's a nice deep area out in the pond now, and I'm really excited about the project. I want to talk about Mackie right now, and that's fishing good below the reservoir. In the past couple days, they've dropped the level in half, so it's now about 80 CFS. It's very low and clear, and it can be fairly good fishing. The fish are spooky this time of year with the low water, but there's actually some pretty good hatches, especially on overcast days, and that's blue-winged olives and midges over in Mackie, and then the nymphing's good all day long, so that's a good option to go. You can still go over the pass until we get a huge snow over Trail Creek, and then you'll have to go around through Craters of the Moon and Arco and go up that way. But that's a really fun winter place. South Fork of the Boise is still closed, and that's going to be closed for a while. I think they need to rest the South Fork of the Boise and get it back to where it was. Hopefully someday we'll see that. I do like Magic Reservoir this time of year. It's actually very good fishing. You don't even need to put a tube in. You fish kind of off the banks in close. On a nice sunny day, I think the fish come in and cruise around and feed, and the water's a little warmer in close. So that can be a really fun fishery down at Magic Reservoir. And as everybody knows, I love to steelhead fish, and the steelhead are starting to arrive. And right now they're down in Riggins, and they're just coming into the Salmon River area. And they'll probably be up towards Chalice in the next couple weeks. So that's always a good option if you're here and catch them. You can actually drive a couple hours and go find some willing steelhead to take. And that's one of my favorite days this time of year. I just love the steelhead fish. When I steelhead fish this time of year, if it's the middle of October and still pretty warm, a lot of times I'll actually use a floating line with small flies. But when the fish really get up to the Salmon River in the fall, it's usually a little colder. November's a great month, and even December if it doesn't snow too much. And I'll put on a sink tip, and I don't get too carried away on my sink tips. I use a type 6, 15 foot, and I put on a string leech up there, and that's kind of my setup up there. If I need to be in deeper, faster water, I'll put on a weighted fly and get it to go down on that type 6 a little quicker. And then as I move through the run and get into a little slower part of the run, say the tail out, I'll put on not a weighted fly, but something very light, still a string leech, and I can make it through on that one sink tip that I have on through the whole run. So I keep it very simple when I go up there. And usually when I'm throwing sink tips, I like Skagit lines. That's a little bit bigger head. It's easier to turn over the sink tip. And then you hear Scandi lines a lot, and I like the Scandis more for the floating tips and floating with dry fly lines. I like the Scandis a little bit better. You can throw sink tips on Scandis. I just think it's easier for most people to throw that sink tip on a Skagit line. So that's kind of a little bit of difference between Scandis and Skagits. Both Rio and Airflow make great lines. I like them both.